This horrible looking thing is a VFC, or umarex if you want to call it that, Glock 18C, and it is a bit rough, as you can see. We've got some blue paint floating around in it because it was previously two-toned. The paint on the slide is starting to come off. Internally, it's a bit rough. The springs have gone rusty. So it's clearly had a bit of a life. But crucially, what's important here is it all works perfectly. So you're not going to see any of this stuff inside the FMG. So what we're going to do then is we're going to have to strip this down and figure out what parts we need to go into the FMG and what parts we're going to bin off. I know that we're going to need the complete top slide, so we're going to get that off for now. However, one thing I do want to do is sort this awful recoil guide rod out. Obviously it's rusty, the springs are rusty as anything. Now, they do work okay, but all I'm going to do is just going to give them a light oil just so that they're still, you know, working okay. I don't want any of this rust falling off inside the frame. So I'm going to oil this up a little bit and then we're going to use that from there. Now we have got in this, that was a nice little bonus that I didn't realise we had. We have got an upgraded hot rubber, which whenever I see red hot rubbers, it always tells me that that's Armour Works. Now, I don't know. That might be, you know, just that Armour Works use red hot rubbers. But it does have a nice tight bore stainless steel outer barrel as well. So, I mean, it doesn't bother me if this is an Armour Works one. But, you know, it's upgraded. So, we're just going to leave it. We're quite happy with that. That's fine. Only thing I have noticed is the hop unit is not completely screwed together correctly. So I'm going to adapt that by just giving it a bit of a tweak with the screws. Looks like the bottom of the hop unit might have a bit of a crack in it as well, which is a bit of a shame. But it seems to all still be together and work okay. So anyway, I'm going to tighten that up before I put this back together and then obviously do something with that. Off the frame, things we're going to need, I believe, is just the hammer unit, potentially the trigger bar. The rest of it I don't need. Now, part of the reason why I wanted to go for this one as well is that I believe this is a version 2 VFC, or umarex if you like, Glock 18C. And the reason why I suspect that is that the hammer set in the back here is all steel. Now we're going to strip this apart to go inside the FMG. So I'm going to oil up the relevant parts, sort that hop unit out. I'm going to strip this, I'm going to get the FMG out and then get it all assembled. So I'll get this all apart, I'll be right back with you. So I've had a quick look inside the I'm calling it the Aegis kit now. The FMG kit, and I've seen what bits we get. We do need the hammer unit and the trigger bar, so we're going to have to get those out. So first things first, I'm going to get the hammer unit out. The rear screw is missing on this one, so we don't have to worry about that. But we're going to obviously punch the rear pin out here to get the hammer unit out. Again, these come apart just like a TM. Now, this rear pin I might have to reuse, so I'm going to keep that. I'm going to lift the hammer unit out, being careful not to lose the valve locker spring. There we go. And then we need to liberate our trigger bar as well. So the trigger bar is steel as well, which is nice. So we've got all steel components on this hammer unit, which is great. So that shouldn't wear at all. So we're all good in that respect. So to get the trigger bar out, we have to punch this pin. You've got 2 pins on the trigger. The bottom one here does your safety, if you like, switch. The one at the top here is what holds the trigger bar in. So we need to punch that out. It'll normally come out one way. I think I've probably gone the wrong way. Yep, I definitely have. I'll punch that back through. Yep, there we go. And then we should be able to lift the trigger bar out and unhook it. we go. We'll push the pin back in just so that will stay in place. And that is pretty much the rest of the lower I don't need. The only thing I am going to keep is the takedown lever, because that is also steel. And out we come. So there's our lower, which we now no longer need any part of. So we can get rid of that. Okay, so these are all the parts I'm going to need. So I've got the recoil guide rod, I've got my hammer unit, I've got my trigger bar, a takedown lever, outer barrel, inner barrel, which I've fixed the hop unit on, and then also my slide. Now, before I go any further, there's a few things I need to do modification-wise to the slide. I need to lose the sights. On an umarex Glock, you can just remove the rear sight. There is no need to unscrew it because you have this steel plate in here that the screw goes into. We do also need to remove your front sight, which has just a normal Phillips head screw in there. So we're going to get that out. Front sight off. Now, I could tidy up this slide right now. And to be honest with you, I might do at some point. But for now, it's functional, it works. I'm not too fussed about the rest of it. Now, the only other modification I'm going to have to make here is I'm going to need to lose this selector. The action kit or the Garda kit or whatever you want to call it comes with a low profile one of these, so I do need to remove that, which is in this little bag here. You can see we actually get a rear sight delete here, which we don't need because we're not using a Tokamarui. There we go, and that's our low profile selector, which has the hole for the detent and the spring. So we need to take this out. To take this out, I do need to undo this screw. So umarex stuff is usually, in fact, I'm going to reinsert the rear sight here so that doesn't fall out. They're usually Loctited in place, so they can be a bit tight, but it's not a bad thing. Just go steady with it. There we go. You see what the Loctite on there. And there's this piece here, very much like a TM. Then you've got your little selector plate, which goes across and activates the full auto. So we're going to need to remove that for the moment. There is a spring in there as well, so just be careful not to lose the spring. There it is. And then we need to remove our selector here. To remove the selector, you basically rotate it round to the semi-auto setting, and then it goes a little further until it lines up with a hole in the back here, and then you can push it out. I'm going to cover it up because I don't want to lose the detent and the spring. And the detent and the spring have stayed inside, which is good. Now, while we've got this apart, it makes sense to have a quick look at our blowback unit and our nozzle return spring, making sure all is well. Here we can see, as suspected, it is a V2. You can see it says V2 on here. Let's have a quick look at our nozzle. Yeah, it all looks well. It's very dry though, so I'm just going to give it a little oil. Don't want to do too much because we don't really want loads of oil going into the barrel, but a little bit of oil will help a bit. Okay, there we go. Give it a wipe down because it's a bit grubby, or it's been sat inside that. Inside of our slide, all looks fine. We've got a bit of a mark in the top of the slide here, which is being caused by the screw on the top of the nozzle. This is a common thing on these. So what I'm going to do while I'm here is I'm just going to take that edge off with a file, just so that it's not going to cause us any further issues. Now, the reason why I've done that is obviously anything that's rubbing on the inside of the slide is just going to cause extra friction. And I don't want it to get caught up or anything like that, so I'm going to get rid of that. We can see on the side here again, V2 nozzle. Then we'll slide in. There we go. So I need to change over our selector now. This appears to be an aluminium piece. I wouldn't say this looks like steel. I could be wrong, but it doesn't feel like steel. It feels like aluminium. So which is fine. It's only a selector after all, it doesn't matter. So I need to get my detent out of this and the spring, which the spring has come out with it, which is good news. Gonna pop that in. We can see the selectors are the same, which is good. I'm going to reinsert this into position. So it goes in this way round. And then obviously need to push the detent in for this to go into place. Let's give this a tap. There we go. That's gone in, and I can rotate that round into position. There we go. So that's in the correct position now, and that rotates round no problem. We need to now put our selector in. There we go, that's in place. I can pop our rear plate back in, which just holds everything in place. Like so. I can put our rear screw back in. I can slide my rear sight back out again. Right, there we go. We've got our low profile selector fitted in there. Let's be honest, it's going to be left on the full auto setting all the time, so we'll leave it on that for now. There we go. Okay, so let's get the Action Airsoft FMG kit out of the box. Here she is. Now, I did a review on this, just a quick look at it, fresh out of the box. So if you haven't seen it already, please refer to that video. Now, what we need to do is to open the kit up. And then we need to take this off because it's just going to be a lot easier to do. And we can do that by wiggling this out here. It will unlock from the front, and there's our upper completely out of the way. And that's the lower which we require now, so that's all good. Now, notice this does have the front frame already installed. Now, I've heard people saying that this did need filing down. So I'm just going to try this out on here to see if it fits okay or if it needs any work, because it is designed for a wide variety of pistols. We can see ours slides in there perfectly. So no modification required with ours, so that's good. We can see we've got a slide catch and our trigger bar spring already installed. Now, one thing that's different with this kit, which is the same as the Aegis kit, the Octagon Airsoft kit has a strange little widget you have to fit in to make this work. But basically, the trigger bar doesn't actually have a pin through it. It just rests on the inside of the trigger, and then as you pull the trigger, it then operates. So, bit of a strange setup, but that's just how it works. So what I now need to do is to install the trigger bar and then install the hammer unit. So the trigger bar is nice and easy because that should just pop into place and sort of fit in behind the trigger, and it sort of rests in place. But I then need to attach the return spring, which is probably going to be a little bit easier said than done. And that will sit like that with the trigger in that position. So we now want to install the hammer unit. Now, there isn't really a good way to do this because all this is kind of in the way. And obviously I'm trying to do this so you guys can see it as well. So, which isn't ideal either. So I'm going to have to try to get this in the best position so you guys can see what I'm doing at the same time. So when I get my hammer unit, I'm going to reinsert my valve locker and the spring for it. And I'm going to insert that in with the trigger bar as well. That's dropped straight in. Now, so I'm going to use my pin. Hopefully that will line up. Yes, it does. And push it through. Reasonably tight, actually, not too loose, which is good to see. I now need to really install my rear screw. Now, I don't have a rear screw, so I'm going to have to improvise. So I'm going to need to get myself a rear screw from somewhere to put that in. Now, I've got myself a very, very small torque screw here. The reason I've got such a small one is the screw hole is at an angle here because you can't obviously get down on top of it. So I've got my tool for this, and I hope, because it's a smaller size, that it will just go in. Okay, it's too loose, so I need to go up a size. That's fine. I'd rather be too loose than too tight and crack the kit. Okay, so next size up then. There's one of these. Right, hopefully this will be the right size. No, it is not. Okay. Right, there we go, guys. I'm going to have to go get my other screwdrivers. Guys, I think I've got one of 2 screws that might work here. I'm going to try the longer one to start off with, see if that will do the job. Okay, it looks like it's gone in. Doesn't look like it's gone too far either, which is good. All right, got a screw that fits, lovely. Okay, so we've got a hammer unit installed now, so I'm just gonna knock that back. Have it on the auto sear as well, so it's ready to go. Got a trigger bar installed. Last thing we need to install is our takedown lever. Now, apparently you don't technically need to install this, but it does help. Otherwise, the slide will end up causing damage to the kit potentially, and also damage to your magazine. Because again, this is a very similar kit to the Aegis kit, which is the same kind of setup. So I need to get that installed. There we go, that's in place. Yeah, that works okay. Right, so now it's time to install the slide. Now I am going to, as promised, oil this up because this is in a right state. So I put some oil on this. Some oil on it is not going to hurt. Okay, install our outer barrel and our recoil guide rod. Now I didn't install the little insert on the end here, so I'll do that quickly. There we go, that into there. Lovely, and then we should be able to just slide the slide onto the kit. There we go. Just check function. Now, at the moment, that doesn't seem to be functioning. Let's put it on semi. So, appear to have no trigger. So for some reason, that trigger bar doesn't seem to be operating the trigger at all, which is odd. It needs to be pushing it up a bit more. Usual, at the moment we've got the, here's my spike here, the trigger bar. It's moving freely, but it doesn't seem to be releasing the sear at all. So it pushes it a bit, but not enough. I wonder if I push the trigger bar back some. Okay, so for whatever reason, the trigger bar is not going back far enough to release the hammer. So I'm gonna have the hammer unit out. I'm not aware of any modifications needed to make this work with a VFC. I think worst case scenario, what I did there to make this work was you've got the hole here for the trigger. Now at the moment, the normal trigger just falls on top of it and pushes against it, like so. And obviously that's not been doing the trick. And the trigger bar is just not resetting. yeah, we've got issues here for some reason. That's just not working as it should. So, right, we need to have this out then, have a look at it. So I'll take it down and we'll have a look, see what the problem is. All right, guys, so I've figured out what's going on. So what's happening is just the trigger bar is just not going back far enough. All it needs to do is go a tiny bit more and that will release. So if I hold that in, for example, and I push the trigger bar back slightly, the hammer will drop. And it's not like there isn't room in there for it to do it. There is. So yeah, we've got a touch of an issue. So what we need to do is, the reason why we're having this problem is the trigger is actually limited. So the trigger in the kit is limited by this little stop you can hopefully see here. So the trigger will only go so far, and that's what's resisting us from releasing the hammer. Now, I did see the Aegis kit comes with another trigger bar. So whether or not that trigger bar is modified specifically for this reason, I don't know. This kit does not come with that though. I suspect on a TM this would probably be fine, but again, I've already gone to the extreme of ripping apart the VFC to do this, so I'm putting the VFC in here one way or another. Realistically, the best way I can do this is to take this aluminium unit out and modify it. The downside is I can see there are a lot of things in the way of me doing that, namely all this folding assembly here. We've got, yeah, I mean the mag catch is not too dissimilar to a normal Glock mag catch, so that's fine. Sorry, slide release. I could try and file it in situ, but I don't think that's going to get me very far. I think really it's got to come out, which, oh, I'd really rather not take that out. Hi guys, so you join me another day working on the FMG. So the other day when I was working on it, I had a bit of a significant issue, which was that the trigger bar wasn't going far enough back to actually release the sear and drop the hammer. Now, I could have probably just gone down the route at that point of putting a TM in here and it would have probably been fine. So if you do end up putting a VFC inside one of these FMGs, be wary of one thing that you will have to do. It's not difficult, it's just a bit fiddly. So I'm going to remove the slide for now and show you what that is. So you can see that I've got the hammer unit and everything installed in here, and if we notice, if I pull the trigger with the auto sear disconnected, the hammer falls, no problem. You might also notice that beside me here is the original. So this is the steel trigger bar from the umarex or VFC G18. So basically what I thought was that looking at the setup, what was basically happening is because there's no pin which goes through the trigger, you can see the trigger itself on here folds up out the way and you can see the trigger bar just sort of sitting there. And it basically what happens when you apply pressure on there, it pushes against it. So that is how your trigger works on your trigger bar. Now, basically what was happening is it just wasn't pushing the trigger bar back far enough. Now, again, if this was on a TM, it probably would have been fine, I imagine. But being that this is a VFC, everything's slightly off spec. And I suspect the trigger bar was as well. And it was probably the material at the front here. On the TM, it probably extends out further here, which would have obviously given it more pressure to push back on. So initially I thought maybe I can build this front up slightly with some weld, but it's just so thin, this steel, so it wasn't really going to be ideal. So then I thought, okay, well what I'll do is, it's in this orientation at the moment, I'll just bend it slightly to open it out and extend this back a little bit, in which case pushing this forwards. The second I went to bend it, I heated it up with a heat gun. Second I went to bend it, it just snapped off. So, and this is steel. So it's obviously been bent very sharply and without any heat. So yeah, it's just sort of decided to disintegrate and fall apart, which is a shame. But I have ordered a replacement, so we'll be okay on that. So what I'm running at the moment is a WE trigger bar, which is like a pot metal one. So if you notice looking in here, as I go to pull the trigger, you'll see the bar does bend slightly. If we look in a little bit closer, you can see the bar's bending. Now, usually this would be resting against the inside of the frame. Here, though, there's a big gap. So that's, not going to last forever. So that's going to bend and snap sooner or later. So, but at the moment, it is working correctly. So I'm just going to leave it until I get the other one through. So going on to what I had to do to make this work. If I pull the trigger, the hammer will fall forwards, and I can show you. Now, if we look in here, hopefully I can get this to focus. I might just zoom you in, it might be easier. There we go. Okay. Now, if you notice looking in here, the shiny section you can see there is the trigger. And what happens is, as you pull the trigger, that pushes forwards and then rests against this part of the chassis. And that limits the travel of the trigger. So basically, that needed modifying. So we had to file some of that surface off on there, actually on the trigger itself. So that part there. File some material off to allow the trigger to move further back. So previously it would move to there. Now it moves back to there, which gives us the extra travel we need to then release the hammer. I'll move you back. So there we go. That's the modification we had to do to get this to run right. Now, I haven't done any other further modifications to the 18C just yet. I am going to tidy it up a little bit because obviously this is a slightly more higher end kit. So I want the gun that's in here to be of reasonable quality. So this is going to get a bit of a lick of paint and sort it out. One thing I have done is change the springs because the original ones were very rusty. I've also added a couple of spacers in here to add a bit more tension because I want to up the rate of fire. To be fair, I didn't need to. It runs really well as it is. But, if I'm running full auto, I like a fast rate of fire. So, yeah, I've increased the spring tension here. So short stroked, effectively, the pistol, so it doesn't lock back anymore. So I'm going to install the slide. Now, I'll need to cock the hammer first. There we go. Slide is on. And you can see there that we've got limited travel. It is a bit, it's not the smoothest, but it's working okay. And that extra spring tension is really pushing that slide forward with some ferocity. Plus, it doesn't go all the way back to lock back, so you can see that our bolt catch is now, our slide lock, sorry, is now defunct. But if we try this out, we should get a positive trigger pull now, and the gun should cycle fine. As you can see, working fine. If I flip that into semi, working fine. So there we go, our FMG now works. So without further ado, we need to install the upper now, don't we? And that is very simple to do. You've got these two holes at the front, these two studs out the front here. So just offer those into there. Try and lock one side in first. And then clip the other one over. Then you can drop this down there we go then. So that is our FMG fitted with a umarex or VFC Glock 18C. And you can see why I'm going to tidy this up a little bit. You can see all the blue from the two-toning. So I'm going to sort that out. Well, obviously, we need to do the thing that you guys are here to see. So let me extend you out slightly. So we now need to collapse this unit. So to collapse it, there's a little tab in the front here which you have to press in. Rotate that round. I then need to press the button on the back of the grip, which allows that to fold in. Let's put that back in again. It is under spring tension, so you do need to hold it. And then lift the cheek rest. You can fold this round. And then that locks in place like so. And then to deploy, and you can see that opens up, locks in, that locks back there. And we're ready to fire. So now one thing that's quite nice with the umarex magazines is they don't have the little nub on the back, which means you can insert a full in here. Now, I don't know how this is going to work with this kit, because I know when I used my Octagon Airsoft or the Octopus kit, I had to do some modifications to the feed lips to get this to actually cam in and lock in place. So I've no idea how this is going to go, but we're going to try it. So I'm going to fold that in. We're then going to press this button to fold this. And then you have to overextend the magazine into there. And then I can fold this in till it locks in. I'm going to try it and see how we do. Yep. And you can see that's deployed. It didn't fully deploy and lock in, but I am holding it at a funny angle here, not really helping gravity. So, but that works fine. So we should be good. There we go. So there is our Action Airsoft, which I believe to be the same as the Garda, FMG9 kit. Fitted with our umarex Glock 18 or VFC Glock 18. And then next video you see this, we'll do a comparison between this kit and the Octagon Airsoft kit that I have, the Octopus kit. But there's the complete unit. It was a bit more involved than I expected. So anyway guys, let's fold this back up for the closing shot today. Thanks for joining me on this journey. I'll see you guys in the next one. Please like and subscribe. Any questions about the kit, obviously fire away in the comments. And I'll see you guys in the next one.